Deicide, the act of slaying a god. A fitting word to describe the unholy power possessed by Deepwoken's strongest boss-killing build, Godslayer version 6. By merely building up to maximum chain stacks, I can increase my damage to such a point I break Chaser, and these are even bad runs, so this should give you an idea of just how strong this build is. Since version 5 of the Godslayer, I have managed to improve the damage by up to 30%, by simply realizing one simple principle about PvE builds. You cannot take damage if your target is dead. Okay, let's cut the overdramatic voices and edits. Gotta quickly add this in post. On November the 1st, they ended up changing Inhale, so now it doesn't scale twice, because for some reason it was bugged for 2 years, and they bugged Rending Impact on Chaser. Despite the point of the talent being to stun things when you guard break them, it now just doesn't work. However, Godslayers are the only top tier PvE that wasn't affected by this, since you can do tech where you spawn lightning clones on Chaser to quickly build up chain, and you can just spine cutter him and use ice cubes. It's a slight nerf to the build, but the runs are only 10 seconds slower, and I can still one cycle grip. Both Brenner High and Speedy's PvE builds were hit during this update, but Godslayer only stayed safe because it's a hybrid between M1 and Frost. Anyways, back to the actual showcase. Just want to let you know you don't need to worry about Godslayer being gutted. On version 5, I went Arc Welder. This was mainly for mantra slots, but now I can actually get Chain Warden, seeing as V6 naturally meets the requirements. And it gives me the same amount of mantra slots, which is very important. The main thing is, just don't progress Chain Warden once you unlock it, otherwise you could risk ruining the build, as there's a talent that summons a chain on Flourish. The one sad part about this is it means no more Fortitude, and thus no more Conditioned Runner for healing. However, this isn't as bad as it sounds, as the only time you're really proccing Conditioned Runner is during Atheron. Since the two bosses you can run around for, Chaser and Ferryman, simply die too fast for the healing to matter. And every other boss in the game, you can't really run during, or they just die way too fast. You also do technically lose 12 HP as well, but that was never really an issue since the Godslayers aren't meant to be tanky anyways. Since as a whole, Godslayers aren't meant for beginners. That's why the Celestial Saint and Tempest Tyrant V2 exist. It's a lot harder to go wrong with them. However, for players looking for the best of the best boss killer builds, No Fortitude gives us 25 more points to play around with, and the best place by far to put them in was Charisma. It gives me two things: Tough Love, which is a 10% damage buff to M1s and 5% to mantras, and the Mantra Taunt. This is incredibly powerful. After I personally asked Archmage to make the damage multiplier talents visible, it was officially confirmed that Taunt is a 20% damage increase. What's important to note here is that 20% bypasses the damage cap. Debuffs that you can apply to enemies, such as Taunt, Auto Scream, Grim, and Reshape and Remold, are really rare because they actually make the enemy take more damage over increasing your damage. Therefore, they're actually more valuable than any other talent in the game. Okay, but now that you've understand what's actually changed since version 5, in this video I'll be covering the stat order, progression tips, and how to actually use this build to its fullest potential. Before we start, I do need to let you know there is 2 versions of V6, and I will also be releasing the improved version of Godslayer V5 if you really want the healing from Conditioned Runner. As always, if you enjoyed this build and want to see more, make sure you like and subscribe, as I have plenty of PvE builds on the way, and join the Discord to get the build maker link. For starters, V6 can be done on absolutely any race. The only thing that'll change between race and race is simply just having less heavy weapon at the end of the build, so overall it doesn't really matter. Although in terms of the 2 best races, if you have them, it is Felinor for climb height and Tyrion for fall damage reduction. So as for the stat order, you start off by investing no points on the starting screen. The best origin to do this build on is of course Deepbound, just because you get some really nice quality of life stuff. For your boons and flaws, you can pick anything, but having Steadfast and Pack Mule is recommended. On the starting screen, you want to make sure to only select the Thunder and Gale attunements. When you spawn in, you'll start by getting your way up to 25 strength. Then you can use your investment points to level up and get a 0-star Gale mantra. Either Gale Force or Wind Blade will do. Then you get your way to 50 Gale Breath. Then use the same trick for Thunder Call to get to 50. Then 20 Willpower, followed by 60 Gale Breath. Then get yourself to 40 Willpower. And now you'll just need to invest 1 point into Agility, Charisma, then unlock Flame and Frost, and get 1 point into Heavy Weapon. But before you invest all those points and unlock the extra attunements, there is one step you have to make sure you get right before you reach Power 11. So depending on the race, it'll be at different stages. But right as you're at the end of Power 10, you need to escape depths. This is to do a few very important things. The first is to kill Kaido. There is 2 very easy ways of doing this. The first is spawning him on a max power slot, weakening him, and then swapping to the slot that needs Ardor pre-shrine. Or the second is buying a carry from PvE Hub. These are 2 really easy ways to kill Kaido, and I personally use the former in my own progression. The next thing you need to do is get the 3 extra talent hands. This will just make the pre-shrine far more consistent, as well as giving you more aces from the Minotierza quest. Then of course you unlock Flame Charm and Frostra on the surface. Optionally you can get the Iron Sing potion too, however you're not going to drink it till the end of the build. Getting 1 Iron Sing just allows you to min-max, as you can eat gold for a tiny damage buff. As always, before you Shrine of Order on a build, especially one as complicated as the Godslayer, you want to make sure that you check off all the pre-shrine talents and mantras. Then you can finally Shrine of Order. Your stats should look something like this. Post-Shrine, you simply go 25 Agility, 25 Charisma, 30 Flame Charm, then you get to 75 Frost Roar and Heavy Weapon. This is done so you can unbound both of them at once to a boss. Then you get to 80 Frost Roar and invest the rest into your Heavy Weapon. Depending on your race, you can get up to 93 on the build. Optionally, you can take 5 points out of your weapon stat and put it into Charisma, getting Snake Oil at 30 Charisma. However, this is purely optional and will reduce your damage by a tiny bit, but it's likely not noticeable. Now if you want to do some more min-maxing, you can unlock Iron Sing by drinking the potion, although this isn't 100% required. If you're making a PvE build this strong, you might as well go all the way to max it out. The most important thing about this progression is making sure you're using Mystic, simply just so you don't miss any important common cards on the way. And the second thing you need to make sure you're doing is taking extra rare cards or burning rares that you don't need. Trust me, it'll make it way more consistent to progress. These are the minimum mantras you want on Godslayer v6. This will just give you the best range while still requiring some light mantra swapping of Spark Swap and Taunt. However, if you want to do absolutely everything as best as possible, then you want to use all of these mantras. Now, this list looks like a lot because it is. If you want to get every single possible mantra you can need, then you will need to sacrifice some HP cards for the build. By no means do you need this many mantras, it's just a personal thing that I decided to go on the prog. When using a Godslayer, there is one tech above all others that you need to make sure you're using properly, and that's weaving M1s and mantras. I know it sounds easy, but you really do need to learn how to get the timing just right, since it's the difference between being able to activate 2 mantras between an M1 and missing a full M1 because you casted a mantra at the wrong time. There isn't really a set order that you should be using your mantras in. All that really matters is that you're using Taunt whenever it's off cooldown, as well as Warden's Blades, since that gains you a lot of passive chain stacks. Don't worry though, in due time, you too can get used to using M1s and mantras. It shouldn't take you long to get used to it anyways. Next, you need to make sure that you're repeatedly inhaling on this build. Not only for the 10% M1 damage buff it gives, but inhaling a mantra gives you a speed boost. You should get about 30 seconds from inhaling a properly modified wind passage on the build, which is plenty of time to kill anything in the game. And honestly, that's about all you need to know to use a Godslayer properly. If you make the build correctly and take the time to learn it, you too can get crazy feats like a 6-second ferryman, collapsing Chaser's ceiling before the boss fight even starts, or 1 cycle gripping Chaser without any chain. Hell, players got good enough with Godslayer version 5 where they could grip him before the ceiling even fell. So I'm sure you guys will pull off some crazy stuff with this build. Anyways, if you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe, and join the Discord for the build maker link. Please refer to the prog if you have any further questions, since I'll obviously go into a lot more detail there. Make sure to check out some more PvE content, and I'll see you all next time.